Hey, everybody, welcome to Deeper Sync. We are here with Paul Turner. Going to talk about the future of data and get his thoughts on where's the landscape headed and what is the future look like for brands. So, Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time to talk to us today. So, Paul, before we get into all the questions that I have for you, you've got a really interesting background. I know you hate it when I bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. You were at Right Media, you've been at Invite, Google, Trade Desk, LiveRamp,
Not
and
Trade Desk.
not a Trade Desk.
Sorry.
Your company got bought by
Yeah,
Trade
yes.
Desk. Okay.
Yes.
So please give us a little bit of your background and what you say and what got you here.
Yeah, sure. So I actually started in direct mail a long time ago in the early 2000s in the UK. And then my old boss said, hey, this online thing's really taking off. You should come and work for a company called Right Media. And that was like going from 0 to 100. I mean, you go from never having heard about online to Right Media, which was pioneering at the time. We got acquired by Yahoo, so I spent 2 or 3 years there. Went to a company called Invite Media, which was pioneering the sort of DSP side and DSP buying platforms. We actually got bought by Google probably about 6 months after joining. So again, another baptism of fire going from this sort of small, scrappy startup to the huge business that is and was Google back then. I then switched and went over to the social media buying side. I was really intrigued by how quickly social media had grown as a channel. And as part of that move, actually moved over to the US to run the sort of sales team there. And that was a really fascinating insight, I think, into, again, the likes of Facebook and others building high quality self-service tools for the masses. After leaving that role, I went to a probabilistic identity company. Really interesting time, I think, for the industry back then in terms of kind of the scale of online marketing and the use of IDs for targeting and modeling capabilities. That company, as you mentioned, was bought by Trade Desk and now underpins Trade Desk.
Trade Desk didn't want you.
Well, I'd left slightly before the acquisition went through, but obviously Trade Desk now uses that platform, that probabilistic device graph as the foundation for their own expansion capabilities. So that's found a good home. After that, I joined a company called Arbor, which was building a first-party data marketplace, so very relevant, I think, to the world today. That business was acquired by LiveRamp, so I spent about 3.5, 4 years at LiveRamp working on their technology sales team, which is really fascinating. I mean, LiveRamp is a case study in and of itself. Fascinating company, super fast-moving, and has really retained that kind of startup feel, even though it's now obviously a huge public company. So I left there and started my own business because I'd kind of seen these amazing founders in operation, in action, and I thought I'd give it a go. So I started a company that was focused on helping social media advertisers access high quality audiences for Facebook and for other social platforms. And we actually grew that to about 1,500 clients within 2 years. Then I got talking to the team here at DeepSync. They were looking to build out more digital sort of online capabilities. And so we ended up being acquired by DeepSync at the end of 2022, and I'm here now working on digital and identity capabilities at DeepSync, and hopefully out there telling the story.
Okay, I love it. Well, appreciate you coming across all those companies. I mean, there's a lot of big, like that's the ad tech industry history right there. So tell me, is there anything that you pulled from your learnings across all those companies?
I mean, I think the one thing that stands out in all of them was the quality of people, and the fact that the quality of people really define the outcome. And I was very, very fortunate. A lot of this was more by luck than judgment. But, you know, like I said, Right Media was at the forefront of kind of how the online industry was changing, and has actually laid the foundation for the programmatic ecosystem as we see it today. Yeah. And that was led by some phenomenal people who've gone on to become, you know, industry leaders and thought leaders. So I was incredibly fortunate to see that firsthand. Obviously, Invite Media, two relatively young founders in Nat Turner and Zach Weinberg, really, I think, just demonstrated how kind of big thinking and execution can get you a long way. And they built a phenomenal business with great people that obviously Google acquired after that. Same with Arbor, actually, working with some ex-Invite Media folks there who started Arbor. Really incredible technologists and the sort of product people, I'd say, that saw the gap in the market and could very quickly build a product and a solution that scaled and found product market fit. Like I said, LiveRamp was a really great example of a business that's moving fast, even at the size that it is, and that was also great to see firsthand. So I think people really define kind of the outcomes in these cases. But I'd say, laser focus on execution, a laser focus on outcomes and results, and just moving fast. I think, too many companies probably pontificate and try to make the perfect decision. I think there's a lot to be said for making a decision and moving with it, and then course correcting if you need to.
Yep. I love that. Awesome. Well, let's talk about course corrections. Let's talk about the landscape today. So when you look across the data landscape, say from 5 years ago to now, so probably just before COVID to now, we've talked about cookie deprecation for 25 years.
Yes.
Like it's now finally upon us. But what do you really see as having actually changed in the last 5 years? In other words, what are the questions that companies should be asking themselves as they think about data and the data landscape today?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of hurry up and wait in terms of the cookie deprecation piece. And is it going to happen? Isn't it going to happen? What does this mean for addressability? And to a degree, we're still in that phase where no one's quite sure what's going to happen. No one's quite sure what the impact will be.
But what are the questions that you think they should be asking themselves, though, as they think about it?
Well, I think certainly, what is the plan B, and how much of our outcomes today are dependent on third-party cookies. I think just even quantifying that would really give a sense of like how much do we need to start investing early in potential solutions. I mean, part of the challenge here, I think we saw this with GDPR to a degree. When GDPR rolled out, I think everyone kind of knew what was coming, but it wasn't until the day that GDPR came out that everyone's like, oh, wow, we really do.
It's real.
And I think probably the same sort of thing will happen there. Obviously, what's happened in the meantime, I think the emergence of retail media is really interesting. We're seeing some really, really interesting trends there, and companies really investing in retail media capabilities that are scaled and scalable and viable businesses, which I think is really, really fascinating. Then I'd say contextual has started to sort of kind of reemerge. I'd say there was obviously contextual acquisitions through the sort of 2010s. We're seeing that there's been more investment on that side. But the big trend, I think, probably for the last 5 or 6 years, and one that we're seeing more of now, is really this reliance on first-party data. We've seen CDPs and sort of these for the companies that help you resolve first-party identity and first-party records into a single platform. We've seen them emerge around a first-party data story, and I think that's really brands and marketers and technology companies starting to realize that actually one of the counters for a world where there's less anonymous identifiers is to build a really robust first-party data strategy. One of the challenges there is that
enough first-party data,
and that's I think the phase we're in now, which is people have tried to build that kind of robust first-party data strategy, and now they're realizing they've got gaps or they have poor quality data or kind of a combination of things.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. So as you're thinking about it, let's say you have brand X, whatever brand X may be. Not only what are the questions that they should ask, what do you think the first steps are that they should take? Because to your point, there's probably going to be a mass frenzy as soon as cookies actually are deprecated. It's like, it finally happened. What do we do now? But the question is, like, what should they be doing now? How should they be thinking about that now? What are steps they can take, even if they don't choose the Trade Desk identifier versus ID5 or whatever? Like, what do you think that they should be, even just experiment?
Yeah, I think certainly the first stage is that centralization of kind of potential first-party data touch points with a consumer, if that's kind of the business you're in. Starting to understand what scale you have, where you have gaps, so you're collecting data in the right way with the right consents, within the right privacy frameworks. I think that's kind of a foundational piece. I think step 2, though, is probably building out a stable of potential partners that can help you with additional scale, additional data quality, and going through that vetting process. Because what we are seeing with the regulatory landscape, and with obviously a change in kind of data availability, is that clients and brands and marketers in particular are going to have to be more selective in terms of the companies they work with. Is this company going to get me in trouble in the future? Does this company have the right data sets that are future-proofed? Does this company think about consumer choice and consent in the right way? And I think going through the process of kind of vetting and building out a stable of potential partners at this point is probably the right thing to do.
Okay. So if I had to put that in my own words, first, look at how much of your own first-party data that you have. Number 2, assess where are there gaps? What do you need to fill in those gaps? And then number 3, find a reputable data company to work with. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good start. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, on that note, then you brought up retail media. I think there's a lot that could be said there. I worked at Amazon for 10 years, so I definitely know the space. But when you take cookie deprecation, first-party data, and then retail media, where you have walled gardens, how like take a brand like Procter & Gamble, those are CPG. How should a brand like that be thinking about retail media in addition to these other things that are non-partner specific?
Yeah, I mean, retail media is really interesting in terms of you have this kind of notion of high quality, generally first party data assets with rich transactional data that can be found on the retailers' owned and operated sites, which limits the need for let's say third party identifiers. But that can then be extended into environments like the trade desk, for example, for extended audience reach. I think it's great to see that I think a lot of these retailers and retail media networks are working very closely with the likes of the trade desk and also with LiveRamp to manage that addressability gap, to say, actually, hey, we want to build large, robust audiences, but we do need to be able to find them on environments that matter to our clients, like a P&G. So I think that's probably a big part of the story and a big reason why we're seeing retail media as a sector start to grow in popularity. The fact that you've got this, again, rich first party data with high quality, consistent transactional data to underpin that, with the potential to almost close the loop in terms of the ad experiences and the experiences that the consumer has through that retail media network. The challenge for retailers and retail media networks is there's only so many dollars to go around.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a non-top 5 or top 10 retail media network at this point, I think the challenge is finding and building enough scale to be relevant to the likes of a P&G. And that may well be, actually will forego scale for specialty audiences and for certain niches that maybe others aren't looking at. But that's certainly going to be a challenge, I think, for any retailers looking to build revenue streams from the likes of a media network. Is it scalable enough? Is the data differentiated enough to be interesting enough to a CPG like Procter & Gamble?
Well, and that's the question. I think so. On the one hand, yes, it's the question of scale, closed loop attribution. Obviously, is a huge impact. But Amazon wants to keep its data to itself. They don't want to share their data with the world. So if you have your first party data, then you have Amazon or Walmart or Target or whoever it is, Dollar General, what have you, and they have their data, and you're using a third party DSP like a trade desk. How do you connect all those dots? How can you do that safely as well? Because your first party data is your gold. How should they think about that interaction?
Yeah, I think the transactional side is one piece, which is the ability to match transactions that are potentially occurring in store. Obviously, you have e-commerce transactions as well, but in-store transactions, matching those back to a consumer profile. And we're seeing, loyalty programs and point of sale data capture become more important for retailers. I think my own personal opinion, and I may be biased based on some of the work we're doing here at DeepSync, is that you should root that strategy in a truth set. In a highly scaled truth set that's predicated on personal information and also online identifiers that say, actually, we can build from here. So we can build from a truth set that says we know who's coming in store, we know who's transacting in store, we can link audience profiles to that, but we also have the ability to model within that truth set. So we can start to look at the attributes that define our customers and building out lookalike models for distribution into the likes of trade desk. And then clearly you can close the loop by starting to link all of that to things like the UUID. So I think kind of understanding how actually having a source of truth, a system of record, gives you a really stable foundation with which your data analytics and modeling teams can start to build scale. Because again, the reality is that just running on transaction data alone for the vast majority of retail media networks will not be enough. So we're certainly in some very interesting conversations around helping to supply the data that really fuels this kind of cross-network audience strategy.
Yep. And what do you consider that foundational layer? Like if you could have as my dad would say, if you could have your druthers, Americans here, what is that foundational layer that's the most definitive?
Well, what's fascinating about retailers is there's still a large amount of advertising activity that happens offline. So direct mail, inserts, sampling, driving people in store from essentially localized marketing around that store location. So in an ideal world, if you're a retailer and building out retail media, you should start with a view of the individuals and the households that surround a store location. And then how does that translate into an online audience? And again, there's a transactional matching process in there. But there's also the ability to then scale that audience into an audience you can distribute to a Meta or a trade desk or a CTV environment. So for me, I think starting with a real world truth set, a real world install of the consumers that live and would work around your store locations is a really strong starting point. And from there, you can build kind of layers of data quality, data types to build out those profiles into very rich profiles that can be leveraged in the retail media network.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because you think about direct mail, the cost of getting direct mail wrong is high because you send a physical catalog, like 40 pages long or whatever it may be. There's a high cost to that. Or reputationally, if I send it and your father unfortunately is deceased, and he gets a piece of mail, your mom is not going to be happy with whoever sends that piece of mail. So there's a high reputation cost as well.
Yeah, I think in a way we've become almost blind to that fact in sort of the online marketing world, where the cost of getting an ad impression wrong is very limited. Now that may in part be the beauty of online advertising, is the fact that you can afford to get it wrong 99% of the time.
Waste is cheap.
I would, again, coming from a direct mail background myself, I mean, I think some of the principles from the direct mail world are still very relevant for online marketing. Know your audience, get your messaging right, test and refine, and kind of learn over time. I think are really powerful kind of mindsets to bring to both offline and online marketing. And you're absolutely right. The cost of getting it wrong offline means that you have to go through the process to make sure your data is really high quality, that it's cleansed regularly, and that it's overlaid with the best possible attributes, because it's too much. There's too much risk in getting that wrong.
And I've heard you say this many times, but you think hygiene is really the place where people should start, right?
Yeah, hygiene is one of those things that's it's not sexy, but it's kind of the foundation for.
You smell really clean today.
Not first line.
But sorry, give us
but I think hygiene is one of those things that it's a fundamental for efficiency, reduce waste, but also customer experience. Whether that's hygiening, as you mentioned, someone who may have been deceased, or sending a piece of direct mail to somebody that's just moved house. Keeping and maintaining your data in an up-to-date fashion, I think is really vital. And actually, that's not just for direct mail use case. We're seeing use cases for hygiene in things like data collaboration.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you have two parties that want to interact through a data clean room, for example, if both parties have been through a process where their data is hygiene and enriched with all of the available information linked to those consumer records, then your match rate in the middle becomes far more robust, and obviously you see larger match rates. So hygiene in itself, obviously very important to make sure you're not wasting direct mail spend, but also very, very important for ensuring that your online ads are on target, that your data collaboration processes are yielding results. So I think that's one of those things that we can take from the direct mail world and should be applied more liberally to brands who are doing omnichannel marketing.
Yep, I like it. All right, so you are a resident Brit at DeepSync in our Farnham office, as I like to joke. And I've taken some liberality with the British slang.
Yeah.
Ace being in our American language cool.
Yeah.
And daft being crazy, as I translate it. So I want to play a little game of ace and daft with you. I'm going to name a term, and I want you to tell me whether you think it's ace or daft.
Okay.
And then you can add a little flavor into why do you think such of each. So number one, lookalike modeling.
Ace. I like the concept of lookalike modeling in terms of the ability to find your next best customer record. I think, again, that's probably predicated on you having access to enough data, both
for the right data, right?
Both prospect data and attribute data, to make those lookalike models as powerful as possible. But I think there's huge applications for lookalike modeling. Clearly, I think that's going to be taken to the next level with sort of some of the AI models that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily want to talk about that in the future. I think lookalike modeling is something that every marketer and brand should have inked as part of their future strategy.
Okay, that does lead to my next term.
Oh, okay.
Which of course it has to be AI. You wouldn't have any conversation without discussing AI.
Okay, I'm going to say ace, but it does come with a caveat. I think a lot of the things that people are talking about in terms of AI and applications of AI are actually pretty daft. I think the potential for AI to fundamentally change the way we think about the world and the power we can extract from data is unparalleled. I think it's a new paradigm for us. There's obviously a lot of noise. I think, from an industry perspective, people tend to latch on to the next big buzzword. But I think there are very genuine possibilities for AI to unlock a lot of value for brands and marketers in the future, just with that particular view.
Well, before I go on to my last one here, I want to ask one question, because you mentioned Yahoo a while back. So I worked at Yahoo back in circa 2010, call it.
Yep.
We had lookalike modeling back then. You definitely had cookies.
Yeah.
So what has changed from even 2010? That's a long time ago, but from that era of lookalike modeling to now, and then how do you see AI helping to amplify that? Just to tie those two things back together.
Yeah, I think lookalike modeling as a basic principle probably hasn't changed that much. I mean, some of the techniques have changed. Data availability and data scale has certainly changed. I think again we're seeing a world where lookalike models are being run over vast amounts of data from a data install perspective, which historically would have been very expensive to run. And I think we're seeing the likes of Snowflake and Databricks really bring cost efficiencies to the table. So that ultimately unlocks the ability for any client of any size who maybe has access to a Databricks or a Snowflake to really leverage lookalike modeling, because it can be expensive, and it has historically been expensive to do that. I think what an AI probably helps us is to answer the questions that we're maybe not asking directly of the model. So having AI kind of run at speed to say, actually go and figure out thousands more combinations and iterations to deliver the best model, I think is where probably the immediate opportunity is.
Okay, but you have to have the amplitude of data to be able to pull from to execute that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think an AI model, or a lookalike model, I should say, is only as powerful as its ability to score enough data and to have enough data flowing into the model. So again, we're seeing use cases where clients are using us for first-party data hygiene and enrichment, but then also leveraging us to find prospects from the rest of the universe, which I think is a really valid use case.
Yep. Awesome. One more. ACE or daft? Collaboration in the cloud.
ACE, I think there's a lot of potential around it. My personal opinion is that the value of that collaboration is probably more rooted in the data and data quality than it is the collaboration tools. But I think the collaboration tools are really powerful in sort of breaking down barriers and bringing potential partners together seamlessly. So big thumbs up from me.
Okay. All right. And the way I envision this, and we've talked about this before, but it's like you can have the pipes, but you got to have good water going through the pipes to make it effective, right?
Yeah. I mean, we gave the example earlier where I think, two enriched hygiene data sets that want to work together in a data collaboration environment, the outcomes are going to be far more powerful when that process has been carried out first. So yes, big fan. Certainly some work to do to unlock the applications.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. I've got one more question for you.
Yeah.
I know you've been traveling for days to get here, but one more thing for you. So if you think about next level disruption, and this is always the big question, right? That's like the $10 bazillion question out there. But what do you see as the next area, even if it's not the idea necessarily, but the area of disruption that will happen within the data landscape?
I think the sort of slight trade-off I see right now is that there's more pressure on data availability in terms of the regulatory landscape and things like third-party cookies going away in terms of their traditional use. At the same time that we're seeing these data-hungry modeling and AI capabilities emerge. So I think we're seeing trends like synthetic data and the use of synthetic data applications to kind of infill the gap, or the gaps where let's say real data doesn't exist. I think that could be very, very powerful. You think about a synthetic data use case for a user panel, where a brand could just go and spin up thousands of kind of panels immediately and to see what comes back. I think there's a lot of value that could be generated by having these experiments run across synthetic data at scale before being brought back into an overall strategy. So I think that could be one to keep an eye.
So on that note, and out of curiosity, so with synthetic data, how as a brand do you protect yourself from what might be something that's not useful, or you're being?
Well, I think that's the next, from an AI model perspective, I think that's probably the next leap, which is having the right mechanisms to bring back learnings and results so that the AI model becomes more and more powerful over time. So there are obviously startups looking at this right now that say, hey, we can more seamlessly connect truth sets to forecasted outcomes. I think that gap will close more and more. Again, we're still talking about the real world here in most cases. So as a brand running panels, if you're figuring out a panel for a new product, for example, you still need to get the new product on the shelves in store to see what happens. So I think over time, maybe that sort of supply chain piece collapses slightly. But I know we are definitely seeing that AI models will become more intelligent over time. And we'll learn from actual real world outcomes. So that's probably a big opportunity for some bright entrepreneur out there.
Okay, I like it. Well, final question, most important question of the whole conversation here. I understand you're a fan of Coventry City.
Yes.
And they're in the FA Cup semifinals.
Yep.
at Wembley.
Yes.
Prediction for the semifinal game.
My prediction is it will be a fun day out with my eldest son, but we will likely not be in the final of the FA Cup. So, and I'll take that. It'll be a good day out. So that's.
But you did win 37 years ago, you said.
We did win a 37 years ago, and I'm probably aging myself by talking about that. So it would be nice to win it again, but I don't think we've quite got the players to do it this year, unfortunately.
Well, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good talking to you. Talk to y'all again next time.